So let's start then. Hello and welcome to another OOTP Developments Twitch stream. My name is Adam. I am the community manager for Franchise Hockey Manager 2. With me, as always, is our producer, Jeff. We are back this week, continuing the Winnipeg Jets 1979 season. Jeff?
Yeah, and if you remember from last week, we just came off our first win of the season, managed a 3-0.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, rather. Yeah, we were alternating back and forth now. We're doing the modern Jets every other week and the old-time one, and introducing some game concepts this week. We won our last game 3-0 against Colorado after we made a trade to pick up Bill Clement, who had a pretty good game for us, so things are looking a little better right now. What we're going to cover this week is training, which is the last big area that we haven't really gone into any detail on. So let's just jump right into that. The first thing I want to show you before we look at the training is the coaching screen. Now you can see here at the bottom you've got various coaching categories which will affect our training, and they give you an idea of how complete your coaching staff is at the moment. 3 out of 5 and everything. Right now we've only got the one assistant coach. I'm playing as both GM and head coach. So first priority is hiring ourselves a couple of assistants. So what I do is go to the free agents tab here. We want assistant coaches, and I want to see their training ratings. Let's find ourselves a goalie coach first, because God knows we need it. The goaltending situation is pretty dire.
Yep.
Sam Height. All right, let's see what he's looking for. Okay, fairly
Okay,
reasonable.
is it?
Yep, go ahead.
I know we are looking. We're at the start of October, or midway through October. I guess we're October 13th. Is it better to be llooking for coaches at the year or maybe around July 1st?
It won't make a big difference. Generally, you'd want to hire the coaches right at the start of the game. We just, for the sake of demonstrating things, have had done autopilot in this area for a few weeks. But going to hire this guy. Let's see. We want somebody who's a little better offensively, and I'm also trying to keep a little bit of an eye on this column, the coaching prospects column, because we're going to have a few young players, and it would be nice to have some guys who are good with them. And let's see here, Daryl Bolia. Yeah, he doesn't seem too bad. We'll pick him up. And we are limited by the coaching budget here, so I think I've only got room for one more guy. We'll pick a good defensive coach. Mike Bram seems kind of head and shoulders above everybody else, so let's do that. Nope, he's going to be too expensive, so we're right up against it now. Let's see, Adam Ekdahl. Nope, that doesn't work either.
Is there any way we can increase our budget, or are we just limited with what we have?
Right now we're limited with what we have. If we make money this season, the budget will go up. And I think I may be out of room. I'm going to try somebody that's a little farther down the list. No, it looks like I'm going to have to go with just the 2 coaches this time. I managed to do that. I was playing around with this earlier, and I managed to get 3, but I think I spent a little too much on the first 2 guys, and that's put us in a bind. But you can see here now, offensive coaching has gone up to 4 out of 5 stars. Goalie coaching has gone up to 4 out of 5 as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about that Andrew Murray? I just saw him on the stream. He was on the last personnel page you were looking at.
Let me take a look.
Doing that, Ryan, or R. Capra from the Twitch stream has a question. If you have the right coaching and get a little lucky with training, can you have a player actually exceed the star ratings that the scouting report says the player has potential of? Or is that a pretty hard cap and they can only get that good?
No, it's a soft cap. It's not easy to exceed it, but it's definitely possible. You can with some luck and particularly with the non-offensive and non-defensive ratings categories, which are physical and mental, you can push those up. There's not really a cap on those categories at all, and the cap on offensive and defensive skills is soft-ish, I guess you could say. It's difficult to exceed it, but it can happen. So you can go past the star ratings that are shown on potential. Now, the next thing I want to look at here is the training screen, which you can access via the roster menu. Go to Info, drop down, and Training, and you get this. Now, the first misconception a lot of people have when they run into this screen is if you don't have a tick mark beside a player's name, he's not getting trained at all. No. Your players are all getting some minimal level of training, just the basic amount of training that they would normally get. What you're doing on this screen is giving them extra coaching attention. And you can concentrate that as much as you like, or you can spread it really thin. And if you have a look here, what I'm going to do, let's say, looking at defensive training, this fourth column. And right now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12 players assigned to that. Now, if I were to drop a few players out, let's take Bobby Hull out of here. He's 40 years old. I don't think we can teach him much.
Yeah, notice he's actually on just about every single one of the training regimens.
Yeah, let's pull him out of all of that. That's not a great idea. And Schuberg is a little older too. I don't really need him there. It sometimes does make sense to have an older player getting a little more focus in training, because it can stave off his decline a little bit. So it's not totally useless to have those guys training, getting extra attention. But what we've got so many young players, we want to focus on that. And you can see as I'm removing guys from this list, every second or third one I take, the number beside their name is creeping up. So it's gone from 4 to 5 to 6. The higher it is, the more individual attention that person is getting. So if I cut down the number completely, let's say we're down to 6 or 7 players. We started out with 12. Now they're now the indicator is at 7, so these guys will have a little bit more of a chance at getting some bonus improvement via the extra coaching help. And you can see in the next column over to the left, they're getting, because we've got better offensive coaching and defensive coaching, and we're only giving 4 players extra attention. God knows why we give it to Lyle Moffat. He's checking forward. He doesn't need offensive help. But let's see, where is...
Well, not right now, at least. We might need offensive help at some point.
Yeah, we probably will. Lindstrom, Dave Christian, absolutely young guy, one of probably our best potential young guy. And let's see if we can squeeze a little bit more out of Morris Lukowicz. Stanwiller, And there we go. So I'll leave it at 14 there. Go ahead.
While we're doing this, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Can you do this training regiment? Can you set that up for your minor leagues, or in this case of the historical mode, your protected list?
No, it's only on your main roster right now. The minor leagues and the reserve list will get sort of a generic setup. They will be affected by your coaching staff. So it's one reason to pad out your coaching staff and do what a lot of NHL teams are doing right now, having sort of minor league instructors, where you'll take a veteran player and they'll work with the younger guys on sort of a roving basis. They'll go up and down between the main team, the minor league team, maybe even the ECHL team, or go visit the guys in the juniors.
So in Winnipeg's case, that would be Jimmy Roy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember who the Canucks have doing it now. It's just something that's coming along the last few years. It's gotten a lot more common. Every team seems to have 1 or 2 guys doing that at the moment.
Well, having people keep checking on your scouting ability or how players are developing isn't never a bad thing.
No, definitely not. And just shuffling this down a little bit. Okay, I'll leave the mental training like that. And now the last thing I want to mention here is goalie training. Goalie training works a little bit differently. You can only assign you can only give extra emphasis to one of your goalies in a given category at a time. Physical, offensive, and defensive don't apply to goalies at all. I literally cannot click on that. But they can get mental training and they can get goalie skills training. So right now I've got both categories assigned to Pierre Hamel, who's our young goalie, who's going to be playing most of the games for us. Gary Smith's 35. He's not going to be improving too much, so I'm not going to worry about him getting any better. He's just sort of a placeholder until one of our other goalies is ready to move up. Marcus Matson, then we signed Bob Janisic last week. And I think we got a question here. Let me get Go ahead.
Well, our crap asks, do you have to tell your player in some place want him to mentor young players as you swap him between the minor league teams and calling him back up? Or is that something that will automatically do if they are an older vet player?
It's handled automatically. It's not really done in that much detail now. That's something that the captain actually has a lot of influence on, and the alternate captains. But the captain's leadership rating does have an effect on the training speed, especially of the younger players. And the younger players are also affected by you don't see it anywhere here, but the coaching prospect's ability of the staff member. So it's a good idea to not, particularly if you're coaching a young team, or if you're coaching a team in major junior, where everyone is going to be 20 or under, you want a lot of guys with a good coaching prospects number. If you've got a veteran team, not such a big deal. You mainly want to worry about their actual coaching abilities. Let me just emphasize that here. If I switch that to the training view, that's the coaching pro. It gets cut off. But right now we've got 3 coaches who are assistants are all pretty good at that, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. And I think that is that. So what we're going to do at this point is jump ahead quite a ways. It's not going to. We get the training reports monthly. So I'm just going to sim forward as far as it will let me. And I don't think I'm going to make it quite until next month because I've got all the alerts turned on. But let's give it a shot. It's going to run through a few games. We'll see what our record is. I'll probably get interrupted by an injury or something.
If it makes it through 3 days, I will be amazed.
There we go. As far as about half a day, Mike Amadeo goes down with an injury.
Of course he does.
And scratching him, Mark Plantry, rookie, back into the lineup. Going to cheat a little here and let the AI handle the lineup for me there. Try her again. And Schuberg, when she get injured somehow too. Let me see what's going on with him.
Rackcast has a comment.
Go ahead.
Saying, I still don't know what to do about scouting reports. I'm assuming you're just kind of more a very generic comment on how to handle, what's the best way to handle a scouting report.
Yeah, actually, we'll be getting a few of those as we do this, so I can hit that in a second or so. Well, when we get our first ones back on those, because I think we've got if I remember correctly, we've got scouting, 15 weeks, and we should have a guy coming back fairly soon. So by the time we get into November next month, I'll have one of those, and I'll give you an idea what's going on there.
Sure. Ratcast, my one tip right immediately is do not put everyone onto the short list.
Made that mistake once.
Make that mistake once and you regret it for forever.
And here we go. As soon as I get a guy,
guys off.
I take care of all the injured guys, and as soon as I do that, one is back and ready to play again. Craig Norwich coming off the reserve list. Going to move him to the active roster. And I need to send somebody down. I think it is going to be Mark Planter. He was a rookie. He has not had a great start with us. It's him or Tim Waters, and Waters has a little more potential, so we will put the kid on the reserve list. And the reserve list, again, I've got to say, keep in mind that it's when you've got a reserve list instead of a regular farm team, it's still operating like a farm team would. It's not going to hurt your player development at all to have a guy down there. Dress Norwich. Schuberg is still out. Back to my lines. And what kind of a mess do we get here? Okay. Slowly moving along here. Oh, man.
Well, injuries will happen. What is Sojenberg hurt with? Speaking of.
Yeah, I may want to put him on the reserve list. How bad is it? Oh, it's just a sore back. He's out for 3 days, so he's going to be back pretty quick. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Dress and Lyle Moffat. Let the AI handle the lines.
Our Crapper asks, if you are in historical mode in an off-season, do you eventually have the option to buy or lease a farm team in the future?
No, there aren't any farm teams in historical mode right now. Everything is handled via the reserve list, and when you're playing historical mode. That's eventually I'd like to get real farm teams in, but it's going to be a big project and something that is pretty far down the road.
Yeah. The reserve list, mind you, act as though you have a farm team.
Yeah.
You don't see stats being gained, but development still occurs. Mike Penman asks, isn't Bill Clement an announcer?
He is now. He wasn't back then. He was a pretty good defensive forward for, it was Philadelphia, Washington, and then Atlanta/Calgary.
Yeah.
We picked him, and in the game he was actually on Calgary or Atlanta this season, and we made a trade for him 2 weeks ago. And I'm just trying to figure out who to scratch now. So, as we desperately needed some forward help.
Our Crappa says, "Oh, I see. They won't go down." Okay, actually, technically, they do go down. They're not with your team. They're not on your roster. It's just they're just on that protected list or reserve list.
Yeah, it's sort of a catch-all for anywhere the player could conceivably be. Whether it's junior, college, American League, whatever other. This year with we're playing Winnipeg right now. It would have been Tulsa in the Central League, where most of these guys would have been going. The old Central League.
Yeah. Have to stop there and think, because Tulsa is now the Winnipeg Jets ECHL affiliate again. So.
Okay, I think we're relatively injury-free. I just want to see what happened to Bobby Hull. He's out for 3 weeks with a rotator cuff strain. I am going to put him on the injury list. And
yeah, the one thing a lot of people are maybe not quite familiar with is the minor league system for the NHL was a disaster basically until the early 2000s. There was multiple leagues, crazy things happening.
The CHL, which is where our real farm team would have been this season, they collapsed, and I think it was 82 or 83. Some of the teams escaped to the International League, which had been sort of the AA league to that point. Then the International League kind of took a step up, and they didn't quite want to compete with the NHL, but were trying to go national. They spent a lot of money. I used to live down in Florida, and I went to a lot of Orlando Solar Bears games when I was there. And it was a really big, flashy production. It was owned by the NBA, the Magic, the NBA teams, their ownership group. And for the amount of money they were bringing in, they were spending way too much, and that eventually killed off the IHL as well.
Yeah, well, you have the IHL, the AHL, and I mean, going back, even if you go back historically, you start dealing with crazy things. And again, as I pointed out on our Facebook post, you have a guy like, and his name is completely evaporated from my mind, LaGrosse Bill, Montreal.
Jean Beliveau. Yeah, okay.
Jean Beliveau had an entire league bought out so he would be forced to play for the Canadiens. That's not an easy thing to emulate, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be having an option to buy out the whole Quebec Senior League to get one guy. Okay, here we are. What I want to look at here, we just hit November 1st in the game, so I get my monthly development report, and you can see everybody that's improved over the course of the month. A lot of these guys are on the reserve list right now, so you can see that what I was saying is true. They weren't necessarily, that doesn't kill our development. They will still continue to improve normally. We've got a little bit of an improvement from guys on the NHL team. Not necessarily stuff we'd want. I don't think Craig Norwich or Dave Christian will be doing much fighting, so that's not terribly useful. You never know.
Orlando Solar Bears are back. I did not know that.
Yeah, they are back in the ECHL, playing out of the big new Magic Arena. I was actually, when I was down there on vacation in December, I was going to try to get to a game, but couldn't make it work. So, still want to go see one of those and see how they're doing now. Apparently, it's not too bad.
Now, I'm trying to remember. Did Gordie Howe play? Was it the Grand Rapids Griffins versus the Orlando Solar Bears for his game in the 90s?
I don't remember who the opponent was. Yeah, it was Grand Rapids and somebody. I don't think it was Orlando. I think it was somebody else.
No?
I'd have to look it
Okay.
up. Okay, but here we are back November 1st, and let's, since we've simmed forward and through a bunch of games pretty quickly, we're, oh god, 2-8 and 2-8-0. Let me take a look at the schedule and see exactly what's happened to us. That's where we left off, the 3-0 win against Colorado. Lost 6-2 against Detroit, 4-3 against Minnesota, 6-3 against Colorado. They came back and beat us. Chicago beat us 5-1. Boston beat us 5-2. St. Louis 5-4. Oh, we just broke the losing streak a couple of nights ago.
Right.
Beat the other semi-expansion team from the WHA Quebec 7-4. Take a quick look at the game summary for that. Oh wow, that's a WHA game for sure. Jimmy Mann and Paul Stewart. Paul Stewart, the referee.
Awesome.
Getting into it, and Dave Christian, the rookie, with a hat trick. And Hamel, well, that's not the most spectacular goaltending performance, but I will take a look now through the first 10 games. We'll see who's been producing for us. I'm just looking at the points. First of all, Peter Sullivan off to a really nice start. Norwich, when he hasn't been injured, doing okay. Lawrence Stamler, a bit of a surprise there. And Jimmy Mann doing what he's supposed to be doing, 39 penalty minutes. What I can do is sort it by the game rating, and I should mention again here, I'm probably sounding a bit like a broken record at this point on this. The game rating isn't necessarily a measure of how a player is doing relative to every other player. It's how the player is doing relative to what the expectations are for him. So in this case, Norwich is an offensive defenseman. He's getting some points. He's had some points. He hasn't done too badly defensively. And he's got a 76 game rating. So these top few game ratings, not too bad. It's starting to get a little bit alarming as I go down and descends into the 50s and 60s. Right at the bottom, good old Barry Melrose. 52, not doing well at all. Tim Waters, rookie, who didn't actually play in the NHL this year. I brought him up about a year earlier. Even better than Melrose. Stamler, 57. Yeah, this is not so great on the on my lower lines at the moment, so I may have to take a look at those.
Okay, P-Dog66 in the chat asks, any pro football stuff?
We did have a football game planned. Unfortunately, the developer who was working on that, Francis Cole, had some serious illness problems, and he's no longer able to work on it. So we're still trying to work out a solution to that. He was pretty far along when development stopped, so we got quite a bit of work done with it, and we'd like to pick that up as soon as possible and eventually get starting out with the NFL. And I know Adam and I would both like to see the CFL in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I thought there was an announcement on the forums, and I could be wrong on this, that there was a new developer hired.
Yeah, we have been talking to somebody. I haven't talked to Marcus that recently about it, but yeah, I know they were talking to somebody. I'm not sure what stage that's at the moment. So yeah, I can't really comment for sure. I've been so deep into the hockey stuff the last little while, and I've had out of the park baseball things to do too as well, so I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to that.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Just a couple more things.
Yeah.
Arcapa asks, what do you consider average for game rating?
Well, average for the 79 Jets is going to be a little bit lower than what I'd normally consider average. I'd prefer to see everybody, as many players as possible, 70 and above. Anything under 60 is kind of the danger zone. You don't want, and we've got 6, 7, 8 guys who are down there right now.
Yeah.
And with this team, it's an expansion team. It's so bad, it's inevitable. We're going to have to put up with that. Once you get into the 40s, if you got a guy regularly getting game scores 40 and below, yeah, that's time to send him down for sure. Okay, and I think we've looked at this. What I want to show you next is something that we added fairly for this. It was actually in the original version of the game. It got added in an update a little later in it, but I haven't talked about it a whole lot. It's the advanced stats, and these are the sort of stats that are being. These aren't official NHL stats, but these are things various people have developed in the last few years to try to move the whole science of hockey stats along a little bit. We're not that far removed from the days where you only had 3-4 stats per player. Goal, number of games he's played, goals, assists, and penalty minutes, and you can't really figure out a whole lot from and do much analysis based on those. Okay. I think you want to ask that question?
Well, I'm going to ask the first one. I don't know if you saw it or not. Dave from Gamehounds, who I'm pretty sure you're familiar with.
Just talking today, yep.
What do I do about Lanny McDonald, who's unhappy about ice time, but is on the second line?
Easiest thing to do there would be to increase the ice time on the second line. As he may be on the second line, but if you're not getting, if he's only getting, depending what, I'm trying to remember what year Dave was playing, and I think it was 88, so Lanny's getting pretty old at that point. I don't think he's going to be demanding too much ice time, but I would try to bump up the time of the second line is getting if he's on any power play units. Give them a little extra time. But it's when they're complaining about ice time, it's not necessarily that they're just looking. They just want to be on the first line. They literally want more ice time. So if they get that on the second line, then get it on the power play, penalty killing, special teams units, that'll work for them as well. And there was another question, I think.
Yeah, our Crappa again asks, so if you called young players off your reserve list and he was putting up under 60s or so consistently, it would be best to drop him back to the reserve list until he develops some more?
More than likely, yeah, because the young players, that's one of the things that can go wrong with them. If you rush them up and they're struggling and consistently getting lower player ratings, that will hurt their development. So you definitely don't want to expose them to that too long. The flip side of that is if a young player is too good for his current league, he's also not going to develop very fast. So it's not really evident in the historical games. You've got the reserve list and sort of the generic one-size-fits-all minor league. It's a little harder to do there, but if you had a guy, if you had a fairly high first rounder and you're debating whether or not to send him back to junior, bear in mind if he's going to completely run over the WHL or wherever he's getting sent down to, that may not be great for his development. It may be good to to sign him and play him in the NHL, even though he's not going to be quite ready for a full-time role yet. But so he's getting some level of competition there. It's a balancing act. You don't want to overwhelm him. You don't want to leave him completely without any challenges. But anyhow, getting back to this, first thing I want to show here is PDO. This is an interesting stat that's was developed a few years ago. All this is the team's save percentage while the player is on the ice, plus their shooting percentage while he's on the ice. And what this essentially amounts to, you can see I've got the tooltip popping up there with an explanation. Basically, it's almost like a luck rating. If you take a look at your stats and see that some guy is putting up a bunch of points, hey, fantastic, looks good. But sometimes it's good to have the double check and see if he's just had freakishly good luck to get to where he is. And you can see that Peter Sullivan, you want it to be at the higher end here. That's really 1,001 really isn't that high. So Sullivan's leading us in scoring right now. I'd say that's you don't have to really infer anything's too wrong there. Schuberg is particularly high. That's suspicious. Norwich had some points. He's doing really well. Down here at the bottom, no, poor Bill Clement is 853, which is really terrible luck. Looking at the pop-up, he hasn't had a point for us yet. So that's the lack of production. Can't necessarily be blamed on him at this point. And likewise for Melrose, I pointed out earlier that he's got really rough game ratings, but he may not be getting a whole lot of support from his teammates. so I wouldn't worry too much about that now. Next thing is Corsi, and you've got the three Corsi components here. I will sort it by the most essential one. And Corsi is basically I'm trying to think how to explain this in a nutshell. You can see it when I hold up the tooltips. It will give you the individual explanations, and it's a little easier to understand. And often, Corsi on ice is how many more shot attempts the team tends to get when this player is on the ice, and Corsi off is how many. They get the tooltip. There we go. How many shot attempts the team tends to get when the player is off the ice, which I'm really oversimplifying it here. You combine them into the relative Corsi amount, and this theoretically is a good performance tracker. There's some weaknesses in it. It does tend to really to underrate defensive players a bit, but in this case, it's not a bad measure of who's doing well for us right now. You can see the big three: Christian, Sullivan, Lindstrom, Lukowicz. And
if you're relying only on these advanced stats, then you're missing some stuff too. But it's a good balance.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good counter to or complement to the game rating and the regular point scoring stats. And poor old Jimmy Mann, our first round draft pick, not doing well at all there. Fenwick is an alternate version of Corsi, basically, where Corsi considers blocked shots in its formula. Fenwick doesn't, so doesn't make a huge difference. Just it's a little sort of a personal choice here. These numbers here at the end, I've always thought these stats were kind of underrated because they're really easy to get a grasp on. Goals for per 60. This is the number of goals the team would score if the player is on the ice for 60 minutes. Obviously, not accounting for the fact that you'd be exhausted if you did that. But it gives you an idea of how well a team is playing when this guy is on the ice. And it's a nice stat because most hockey fans have this sort of mental standard in their head of what a good goals against average is. And this is essentially the same number, only this case for offense. And you can see that we're scoring a lot when we got Schuberg and Sullivan on the ice, and even Lawrence Stamler, oddly enough, who's not a great offensive player. And when we got Bill Clement and Jimmy Mann out, the goals are somewhat below 1 a game, so that's pretty bad news there. And goals against per 60, there we go. That's why Stamler's goals for is fairly impressive. He's absolutely terrible defensively, and we're giving up close to 7.5 goals per game if he was on the ice the whole time. And shots for per 60 is essentially the same thing, just showing how many shots we're getting for and against us. Again, we're getting killed with Stamler and Norwich and Peter Marsh, these other defensively deficient guys. On this end, the streaming software apparently decided to cause a Windows crash, so it took me a second to get that all set back up. And when getting everything reloaded, it looks like we lost a couple of days of game time since the last save. So ignore that win over the Nordiques I previously mentioned. It's now a 2-2 tie. And our stats are a little bit worse thanks to that, but not substantially different from what we were looking at before. So I think at this point, let's just take a quick look at where the roster is. We've got Bobby Hull on the injury list, which isn't too much different from what happened this year in real life. And then the previous year, he spent most of the last 2 years he was with the Jets injured. So he's out.
Dave from gave Gamehound's notes. Got to save often.
Yeah, definitely. So I was actually lucky that time because the save hit right at the beginning of the month. Or no, it must have hit the beginning of the week. So I think I've got done weekly saves, so I didn't lose too much. Not much fun when you're doing this, and I've got it set to say yearly saves, which I do sometimes if I want to go really fast and wind up losing about 8 months of data if something goes wrong. Okay.
That's a lot of computing time to get back.
Yeah, not much fun. And alright, I think I'll leave the lineup as it is right now. So we've got about 10 minutes left if we want to take any more questions that people might have. Otherwise, I believe we have a game today against Washington. who's not that great of a team right now. So let's take a look at the game and make sure my lines are still... Yeah, those lines still look like they're intact. Play this game against the Caps and see how that turns out.
Against who was it, sorry?
Washington.
Oh, Washington. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Washington had a decent... No, wait, that was later on.
That was a little later. They were still pretty bad at this point.
Yeah.
They were absolutely terrible for the first few years, but now, right now they picked Dennis Maruk up from Minnesota after he left after the Cleveland Minnesota merger, and Mike Gartner from the WHA and Rick Green, pretty good defenseman for him. So they're just getting the building blocks of where they needed to be, but they were still pretty bad at this point. They wound up finishing, I think it was Winnipeg and Colorado were 1-2 at the bottom. I think they were third from last at the end of the season. They wound up taking Bobby Carpenter as their first rounder. So
well, that could have a worse pick than that.
And let's take this down to... Don't want to see only the scoring. Well, let's just do the scoring. I'll have it run through this fairly quickly, and we'll see how they do here. And just so people who haven't seen the game before can get a little bit of a look at the in-game interface. And if I had this on a different watch mode, you can see the different options I've got here. It would give us a lot more play-by-play. Right now, it's just going to give us the play-by-play that precedes the goals. And Lawrence Stamler scoring for us again. I think the guy had maybe 4 points in real life this season. He's probably already up to 5 now, but I'm not going to complain. And you can see the lines changing and so on and so on. It's, you'd get, if I took it down to, let me just do that for a second. The full game option, you can see it giving you much more detail about where the puck is and play-by-play of every single thing, but we want to move this along a little bit, so we'll just wait for the actual scoring to happen and having a good defensive game for once. No shots on goal at all by the Caps, and as soon as I say that, naturally they score in their first shot.
Of course that would happen. Dave from Gamehounds asked, thoughts of a goal?
Sorry, I didn't get that?
Dave from Gamehounds asks, any thoughts of a goal horn?
Yeah, at some point we want to get sound in there. It's not a huge priority, but it would be great to have the basic sounds like the puck hitting the boards and the goal horns and crowd noises and whatnot. The baseball game has it, so we want to do that soon-ish, but exactly when remains to be seen. Right now, if I had to bet on it, maybe not for FHM3, at least not in the initial release. Might be something we can take a little time on later in the year and sneak in, but yeah, it would make things a little more lively. And
yeah, it's definitely something on the radar.
Yeah. Going on to the second, somehow we managed to come out of that down 2-1.
Well, that'll happen.
And great rebound control, and now it's 3-1.
Of course. But we have how many guys in the box? Too many.
Yeah, we've had well, I don't think we've had too many penalties so far. Oh, good God, yeah, 22 penalty minutes. There's been some fighting here. That's one of the things that just having it on scoring summary mode won't pick up. Won't show you any of the fights or, oh God, now we're really getting killed. This isn't good. Okay, I think that's going to be a priority next week or the week after, actually, when we get back to this game to start making some changes, and at least we've got one there.
Oh man, okay.
And next week, of course, we'll be back to our Modern Jets game, which Adam will be playing, and we'll get into a few more detailed concepts. Yeah. We're doing slightly better in that one, not a whole lot, but...
well, we have some building blocks for the future.
Yeah. And I should mention while we're doing this, we've still got one more update for FHM2 scheduled. Working on that right now. Had some fairly promising results from what I was looking at earlier. And this game I'm playing right now is actually using the most recent build. And no, the crash had nothing to do with the game. That was something that's definitely some of the other software I've got running right now, so don't worry about that. But we're aiming to get that out hopefully towards the end of next week or early the week after, and that will have the final trade deadline deals.
There was a question on Facebook, and who asked it, the name escapes me. Is there anything major coming in the final update, or that you can divulge about it?
Aside from the bug fixes, I've been tinkering around a lot with the AI. You should see it trading for draft picks a lot more. Made a bunch of changes to the way the KHL draft works, so that should be a lot more accurate now and be easier to sign players that you're supposed to be able to sign. I'm just trying to think what was there are a couple other things that I did offhand. I'd have to dig up the email and
nope, that's okay.
Remember, sure, just drawing a blank on it right now. But yeah, there's been some second period is over. Moving on to the third. But yeah, I'm just trying to hit the stuff that's. There were a lot of complaints about that people have mentioned over and over again. We're trying to get that all in before we shut it down to move on to development of FHM3, which, even though it's not technically officially announced yet, we're going to be starting development on that as soon as we've got this final update out the door.
Well, when we were already talking about giving away copies of the game, I think
I think people have kind of figured it out by that there is going to be a third version of it.
If you're looking for a copy or to win a copy of it, you can fill out our survey. The survey links are on our Twitter, yes, which is at Franchise Hockey, or you can go on Facebook, which we are there under Franchise Hockey Manager. I will also, when this video is archived up on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/OOTP developments, I will also add the survey link on there if it is still live. I'm not sure exactly what day it will be going down, but probably no later than this weekend, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that'll be the end. I can't remember exactly how long they've got it set, but it should be close by then. And we are just getting destroyed here.
If you happen to be watching late, this weekend is March 5th.
Yeah.
So 9 goals given up. Yeah, that's not exactly very strong.
And I wasn't looking. If we started Gary Smith in this game, I think we actually started Hamel, and he got pulled, and Smith came in, and Smith got beaten so badly that the coaches put Hamel back in. 11-3. This is the sad thing is this is not a good Caps team that's doing it to us. Okay, this is
apparently
sort of a low point of the year.
Will be there throughout the weekend.
All right, so. Rich is in the channel. He's the reason we crashed. He showed up.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God it's over. 11-3. Well, let's say no more about that.
Nope, this was not a great game too.
But at least when we get back in a couple of weeks, we can start taking some measures so that sort of thing doesn't happen again. We definitely have to get rid of some of the 2.5 star guys on the roster. Maybe look at a new goalie. Let's just see where we are in the standings right now. Good old Smythe Division. The only saving grace is Colorado is even worse than us, which is exactly what happened in the real NHL that year.
Ratcast, or Dave from Gamehounds, says, I noticed the goalies get replaced automatically. Yeah,
the goalie, the computer AI will do that if the guy's either, well, if a goalie gets injured, it will do it then, or if somebody's getting killed, depending on how exactly what the situation is, they may pull the goalie. Or in this case, where you lose 11-3, he will pull the goalie, put the backup in. The backup will get killed, and you put the starter back in just to spread the pain.
And it does happen in the NHL.
Yep, definitely.
You can pull your goalie too and put the backup in if you want. That is something you can do in your roster movements during the game.
Yep, definitely. But well, you can see where we are. There's not a whole lot of hope for this season, but I think our goal was to try to beat the historical Jets, and looking debatable about it at this point. But when we get back to this 2 weeks from now, we'll start looking into a few of the things you can do to help with a roster that puts up numbers like this, which are pretty sad at this point. Minus 13 for Melrose.
Before we go, can you take a quick check on free agents and see if there's any forwards who we could possibly add, or the best forward we could add?
Yeah, I can take a quick look here at the free agent center. And let me just quickly show you how we can filter players out. I only want to see the forwards. I'm not going to worry about the age or potential settings right now. And we're only looking at free agents, and in every single league I will sort it by ability, and we've got a few guys. Veli-Pekka Katola, who's a great Finnish national team player and is actually a Jet for a while in WHA, is a free agent at the moment. He was playing in Finland that year, and he would have eventually signed with Colorado for 81-82 the next season. So, or was 80-81 is the next season. Signed with them for a couple of years. And what you can see, most of these guys that you're looking at here right now are people who are playing in Europe and hadn't come over to the NHL at this point. Matty Hagman, ex-Oiler, or actually ex-Nordique, wound up going back to the Oilers in 19. I think he signed at the end of this year or early in the next one. Lars Molin eventually wound up on the Canucks. Mikko Lainanen, Rangers, and so on down the list. Yes, so there's a few Europeans we can try to pick up. And remember, this is back before the NHL had that rule where the Salainen rule, where the European players had to pass their waivers when they came back into the league. We can just sign them at any time. So excellent. We will definitely look at grabbing one of these guys next week, I think, and one or more maybe.
Yeah, there's a few people. There's some younger guys there who might be able to help out. Or
yeah, actually, I think we checked goalies once already, and there wasn't much in the way of help.
Well, that's when we signed Bob
Janicek, yeah, and Gary Carr is the top end of the list. Nothing is going to help us there, so if we want a goalie, we're going to have to trade for him, which I think is maybe the best option at this point. There's poor old Pierre Hamel and his 4.69 goals against average, which sadly enough isn't that well. It's still pretty bad, but it's not terrible for the era. No. And Gary Smith is 7.1. I think he is done as a Jet.
Well, I'm trying to think who the best goalie of the era would probably pick up, and there's no names jumping out.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to flip through the lists and just check out the backups. I'm sure somebody's got a decent backup or a third stringer that's much better than our current starter. But
since we're only at 2.5 stars, that shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, definitely not hard. And just for reference, anybody's not familiar with the game, you usually want your NHL, your players, to be at about 3 stars if they're going to be playing any amount of time. And you can see right there, we've got our best possible goalie is only 2.5 stars, and he doesn't have much potential to get beyond that. So yeah, we need to make a change there for sure. But I think that's about it for this week. So if we want to wrap it up here, we're going to be going next week back to our Modern Jets game, and hopefully being a little luckier there than we are here. And sorry for the little delay we ran into during the broadcast. Wouldn't be FHM stream without technical problems, I guess. Maybe next week, knock on wood, we'll have it all together and no problems. But for now, thanks for watching us, and we will get back to this game in a couple of weeks, and we will go into a little more depth of some of them and maybe recover some of the things we've already mentioned. But next week we'll be back to the Modern Jets, and we'll see what Adam has in store for us there.
All right. You can find us again on Twitter at Franchise Hockey. You can find us on Facebook at Franchise Hockey Manager. We are on YouTube, where this video will be archived at youtube.com/OOTP Developments. There's 2 different video options where that are separated between the historical Jets and the current Jets. You can find us on our website as well, which is ootpdevelopments.com, for following all the newest updates for the game, and just to come chat with a bunch of very knowledgeable people about the game. And Jeff, is there anything else?
No, I think we've covered it. Just if you haven't had a chance to fill out the survey yet, please drop by the Facebook page or the forum, and you'll see the link to it there. We definitely want to get everybody's feedback on what they want to see, how they're playing the game right now, and what they want to see in the game in the future. And believe me, that will have a very big impact on on our short and long-term plans with the game.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.